Even talking about it, honestly, my heart starts to race and like I feel like I almost could cry.
In 5, 4.
But for me, it was really hugely negative on my self-esteem and on my mental health, and I think largely contributed to so many eating disorders. And it's like, it's a thing that kind of haunts me.
Was there ever a point, though, where you're just like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to go in this role? Or was it forced? Was it forced on you, like, hey, we gotta pay the bills, we gotta take this role?
I would cry on several occasions when it just felt like it really got to be too much, and I'd tell my mom, I don't want to do this anymore, but she would either say, like, Nat, you don't mean that, or she'd say, well, we need this.
Last year, it was announced that iCarly was getting a reboot, without the original creator, aka footfucker, Tan Schneider. But many were quick to notice that others were missing too. Miranda Cosgrove, Nathan Kress, and Jerry Traynor, who I'm convinced is a Time Lord at this point, but they all returned to the show without Jennette McCurdy, which raised the question, why didn't she come back? Well, I think I very much have that answer today.
People are even more interested in seeing a former child star fail.
In Hollywood, child actors are exploited for money to fuel their parents' hunger for greed the moment they are ejected out that fucking vagina. It's true that for years now, children have been in the spotlight in many huge movies you and I watched as 3'5" drooling gremlins. Whether that's Home Alone 1, 2, 3, or 4. How much did they make? Fucking 200? But I think as kids, we all went through some sort of stage of jealousy, wanting to be that person on the big screen. It is human nature from a young age to thrive off attention from others, which is why we show it off, as our parents called it. Which, by the way, Mum, my day was ruined when I heard those words, so cheers. Like many family vloggers, some children are pushed into the dangerous spotlight in which they didn't ask to be kicked in front of in the first place. Forced to participate in a cutthroat working industry that some simply didn't want to be a part of, leading some stars to get burned by the lights. This is the case with Jennette McCurdy.
Let's go.
Jennette McCurdy started her career at the young age of 6 years old. You know, I say like she started like she had any choice in the ordeal, but she was forced by her mum to become a child actor at such a young age for one simple reason. It was because she thrived in the arts world and had a huge passion for... Oh wait, no? Oh wait, no. At age 6, Jennette claimed in a podcast that she already had anxiety about financial problems involving money. At that age, I was hinging my legs to the opposite sides of the wall to look like Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3. I don't think money issues had ever crossed my pea-sized brain.
She would pick up shifts there, and I just remember constant stress, constant arguments about money, constant... my mom was quite erratic and kind of just like screaming and wailing and crying about not having enough. And I remember thinking like, well, this is not gonna work, and I don't want this for my future, and I don't want this for my family. And so when she put me into acting, I kind of got the message and understood the mission, and just was like a little kind of soldier.
And how old were you when you realized that money was so important and you guys needed it?
I think it was probably when I was 6 when my mom put me in acting.
Because that's what a normal childhood should be. Innocent to the big bad world that you learn to slowly discover as you grow up and, develop crippling depression. Many children born into the acting and Hollywood industry lack this, and in retrospect are left fractured and turn to coping mechanisms that the media and public call breakdowns. It's always been an unhealthy addiction for humans to point at child stars and predict their downfalls.
It's an interesting area because I think, I can speak, specifically to the kind of child stardom, teenage stardom thing, because I feel like that's what people are even more interested. People are even more interested in seeing a former child star fail. I don't understand the fascination with it. I wish that wasn't the case. I think it perpetuates whoever's experiencing probably some real mental health struggles. It makes it worse for them. I wish that society didn't do that to people. It bothers me so much. It bothers me so much. I don't know what needs to change or how it can change.
Fame is something that if you've never experienced it, you just have no idea how much damage and disruption it can cause to the human mind. Now I know whenever people, and myself included in my last video, mentioned Jennette McCurdy, the focal point of the case is Dan Snyder, who I'm sure you are all aware of. He is a giant foot, that's him. But many fail to mention her mother's control and abuse held over Jennette's head. And I'm going to talk about this more in depth, because she is seriously insane. Hardly anyone mentions her in their videos. Most people just point the finger at Dan. I'm not saying that that man didn't contribute any problems to Jennette, because it is clear in interviews that the show did have effects on her. But most of the videos out there on this topic are just straight up lying in their titles. Like, she never said this. Never said this. Shout out to the corpse running this channel, by the way. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, so let's go from the start. At the age of 3, Jennette's mother was first diagnosed with breast cancer. Jennette claimed in an article that she found comfort during the hard times by watching Star Wars with her brother. Funnily enough, I think Dan actually had a role in one of those movies. Get it? Because he's. But wait, pause right there, because this article is very sus. A lot of the claims here point that Jennette McCurdy wanted to start her career in acting, such as this one about her pointing to the TV claiming that that's what she wanted to do. Or there's this one as well where her parents apparently doubted her career choice. Well, we all know that's not true. Now, this could be a few things. This could have been Jennette's mother orchestrating Jennette to say those things for the interview, perhaps in a pep talk beforehand, as she was 15 when this article was published back in 2007, and was still heavily under manipulation from her mother. Like I said, at age 6, she was pushed to be a child actor and had pressure to succeed to help her family, which to me is pressure no child should ever be placed under. I mean, at 6, your main role in life is to just shit your pants and pee, not bring home the bread. With her mother working part-time at Target, Jennette started to pick up more work, and she ended up being her family's main source of income. How did her mum react, may you ask?
Sometimes it would be like, I should have stopped having kids. I wish it would have just been the boys. I should put you up for adoption. And then she'd veer the Ford Windstar over to the side of the road and basically tell me to get out of the car because I'm going to put you up for adoption, get out of the car.
She placed her under extreme control, such extreme control that Jennette admitted in an interview that it wasn't until she was in her 20s that she had a sleepover. And this was all because of her mum. Her mum also began counting her calorie intake when she was young too, and this put pressure on Jennette as she felt like she had to take on the hero role to provide food for the table. By age 10, her mum became obsessed with her daughter's appearance and the maintenance of it all, bleaching her hair and starting to whiten her teeth too. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think 9 out of 10 dentists recommend that. That's a dumb idea. Jennette's relationship with her mother was brutal, and the details she explained sound horrifying, including being threatened to be placed up for adoption, and the anger that would project out of her mother in mental breakdowns is often described by some as inhuman. A lot of the traits here so far sound so familiar to family vloggers to me, a genre of insanity I've covered in depth a few videos ago. It's so sick and twisted that some parents look down at their children and see them nothing more than a new source of income. Like, I can't imagine sitting down beside my wife, A, because I don't have one, and thinking, you know what, yeah, let's have a child, not because I want to be a dad or you want to be a mum. I want to make that sweet ad revenue. But I swear, I'm terrified for the future, because what do they make these days? Do not order Thomas the Train.8. I fucking hate this platform. Jennette explains her ED started when she was 11 years old, claiming that she learned quickly in Hollywood maintaining a small figure meant she would be booked for more roles. Now, Jennette claims here that she doesn't hold this against her mum, but this is the same person who changed her diet and restrained her solely to try and delay her puberty stage. Imagine trying to hold back your child's body from developing naturally, in which all you want is your child to stay a preteen just so you can make more money from her. I mean, Jennette was so scared when she first started developing more chest that she thought she had breast cancer. Seriously, what in the mini lad even is that idea? There was even a case where Debbie, Jennette's mother, friends from dance classes were concerned about her daughter's weight. Instead of talking with her own daughter and perhaps getting her some help, she instead told Jennette to tell them that you're fine and that you're eating well. Jennette had a huge problem and was being gaslit by her own mother. The fact that Debbie herself too had been hospitalized with anorexia, it's mind-boggling that someone who's been through that exact situation would lead their own child down that path without any remorse. Now, trigger warning here, as I'll be talking about Jennette developing bulimia because her agents and people around her made comments that she never looked better. Bearing in mind others had concerns, instead these producers saw this unhealthy lifestyle as appealing. This led Jennette to developing bulimia, which is an eating disorder where you eat a large amount of food and then vomit it back up after feeling anxiety of putting that weight on. Now luckily Jennette's sister-in-law spotted this and that she was in trouble and got her the help she needed by providing an appropriate therapist and got her into a much healthier lifestyle physically and mentally. Thank God there's actually good people out there. I mentioned this in my last video, but it's very important to talk about it again, but in more detail. So, at the time of filming the show iCarly, Jennette obviously had an ED and also suffered for bulimia, as mentioned before. A huge part of Sam's character in the show was the fact that her character had an obsession with food, and it became a comedic punchline for Sam to have the most random food she would just pull out her bag, and I can't imagine how hard this must have been for her. Now, we don't have solid proof that Dan did this maliciously. We can't prove that he did, and we can't prove that he didn't. Instead, we are stuck in this awkward middle stage where my mindset is, if the mums from dance class noticed, surely huge producers who look out for slim actors would have too. So there's a level of neglect, not only from Dan, but also perhaps other producers on the show too. Jennette also made a claim in a podcast about a producer being very abusive and mustache twirling in terms of being a stereotypical evil, villainous type of character.
What about the bad parts? That sounds easier.
It certainly is. Bad parts, I mean, there's a lot of abuse that happens. I worked with an incredibly emotionally abusive producer. Even talking about it now, my face gets hot thinking of it, just because, he'd say things like, you would work at Yogurtland if you didn't work for me. And he would just scream.
How old were you?
I was, when I started the show, I was 13.
Does Yogurtland even hire people when they're 13? Is that even a reasonable thing to say?
The real questions. Thank you. He was like a comically, like the bad teacher or whatever you would expect in like an over-the-top broad family comedy. That's what he seemed like, very villainous and almost like mustache twirly in his kind of personality. So there's just like, there's abuse, which is a very on the nose bad. And then there's also, I think it leads to a sense of entitlement, where it's like, if you have so much at a young age, you think that that's reality.
The thing I'm not sure about is she stated that she started the show when she was 13, but Jennette was 15 in series 1 of iCarly. Now, the show did take some time to produce and get the green light, and the article I mentioned earlier, it is mentioned that the show was very on and off to begin with, so maybe she was cast when she was 13 and filming started when she was 15, but I'll leave it up to you to decide who she's talking about here. Today, Jennette seems to be in a much better place, and I couldn't be happier for her. She's been on a lot of podcasts, as you've seen throughout this video, and has been able to talk about things which I imagine would be very hard to talk about. After her mother died, she went through a small stage of grief, but then soonly realised that she was glad her mother died, and it's no surprise she felt that way. She dealt with this in different ways. She put on a one-woman show for an hour back in September in Hollywood, ironically. She also runs her own podcast too, called Empty Inside with Jennette McCurdy. If you wanted to keep up with her and what she's doing today, then that's where she is. And she also has a book coming out next year that will definitely give us a bigger insight of the struggle she faced, and perhaps she will go into more details about Hollywood. I hope she does. But I wish her the absolute best, and I'm glad she's on the road to recovery. But like I said, fuck Hollywood.